So now I wanted to take more control of my photography. I'd got an old developing tank, but I went out and bought another Universal Patterson developing tank, allowing me to do my 35mm and my 120 roll film. So I could now have control over the processing of the negatives. Next step was, what am I going to do for printing? This was in my first kit when I got the developing tank and the paper from the rummage sale. The only thing with photography is there was no computers at the time to find out information. We didn't do photography at school. I didn't know anybody at the time who did their own processing, so I just had to play it by ear, as they say. Anyway, I thought this is what you used for doing your prints. I've got no light, safe light, so what I did is expose my paper, then I would place them inside the developing tank, and then I would go through the process of putting in my developer first. That would be on the paper, it would say anywhere between 30 and 60 seconds. Once that was through, I would drain that off with a drain at the bottom, rinse it out. Brilliant idea of rinsing it out. You literally hung this off of the tap. The water comes through here, clear flows from the bottom. When that's gone through, drained, I would then put in my fixer. Fixer would go in for about 3 or 4 minutes. When that was finished, it was the same again, drain it off. Once I drained it off, then it would go under the tap again, and about 5 minutes to rinse all the excess chemistry off of it. The only thing that was wrong with this method is the exposure and how long I need to give it. I couldn't see what was happening to the print at the time, so it was very much hit and miss, very frustrating. And yes, I know now, with the wiser, it's not for paper, it was for plates, photographic plates. Where I usually get all my photographic stuff one day was Johnson's in Market Arborough, and they had a Jobo enlarger. I'd never heard of it, but as you can see from this diagram, that it was pretty crude. It was basically like a shoebox on its side. It was made of tin. You actually put a 35mm negative on the top, and these are the instructions. You waved a bulb around for so many seconds, and that was enough illumination to go through the negative onto the postcard, which was on the bottom, and that gave you a reasonable size print. The only thing is, I couldn't do at the time the 2 1/4 square. But at another rummage sale, I came across another little, this is what I came across. I don't think anybody had seriously an idea what it was. I didn't for a start, until I flipped open the top and I thought, that looks exactly like the Jobo, so this must be some sort of postcard enlarger. And that's what it was, true enough. It says on the label there, I don't know if you can get the label in, Exactrum Johnson's 35mm postcard enlarger. But this had great improvement on the other one, because we have a section that you can pull her out, so I can get a better middle part of the image magnified. So to make a print, I need to put the paper in the bottom of the box. There's my border that goes round. Next, you can do them borderless if you like, but this is what the original instructions were. That goes over the top. My 35mm goes in between 2 pieces of glass, which have now been replaced with perspex nowadays. I have to be careful making sure they're nice and clean. And then all I need to do after that is to simulate a white light, and that is giving me 10-15 seconds. That's all I need to do. Having done that, I then need to process it. I'll take this out of the way, go to the bottom of the box, take out the paper, the mask, and the paper, and I need to process it. Developer, stop bath, fixer. And just like Blue Peter, there's one I did earlier, a long time earlier, probably 20 years ago, I don't know, quite some time. But it just shows you, it was pretty crude, but it did actually work. But the only thing is, the 35mm at the top was a bit restricting. I did try putting a few of my 2 1/4 square there, but I could only get such a small part into the picture. And then I came up with the idea one day, why don't I make another unit that goes in where the 35mm housing goes in on the top of the unit. And this I made 2 1/4 square, and it was quite successful. It did blow up the pictures, and with the means of adjusting it, I could actually center the image that I wanted to try and get. I was doing portraits a lot by this time. This is a replica of the one I built years ago. This is just polyboard, but I'll have a look one day. I'll make that as part of one of the films and see if that method still works. I'm sure it will, but it'll give dark clouds were looming about my hobby photography. My parents didn't like it at all. I was taking up the bathroom too much, the smell of all the chemicals, that was too much. But my stepfather decided to teach me a lesson one day. He started locking me out at night, which basically means when I came out at 10 o'clock, I couldn't get in. A voice would shout down, find somewhere else to sleep. So I slept rough quite a few times. Having had enough of this, one day I had the brainwave, why don't I go to the factory where I worked at the time and see if I can get into the boiler house. Got to the boiler house, guy was most understanding and let me sleep beside the boiler among the sawdust with a few sacks. I woke up around about 4 o'clock, and then I suddenly decided that if I did my shift, I went down to the machine, did what work I'd got to do that day, clock off at 8 o'clock, and then go home to get some sleep. A week later, the foreman came round and inquired why I'd clocked on so early and gone at 8 o'clock. I gave him the outline of the story, and I thought that was that. I wasn't aware that he knew my mother from years ago, went down and tore my stepfather off a strip, as they say. After that, I never had any problems about the photography, but I had to restrict it a bit. At this point now, I really needed an enlarger. I'd been looking in the local papers, nothing came up for sale. I'd been round all the rummage sales, I'd exhausted my places to find one. So I decided to make one. It couldn't be that difficult. So I made a wooden baseboard. I put a pole at the back. My difficulty was going to be ratcheting it up and down, so I got around that by drilling a small series of holes, increments of about 1 inch apart, and I'd move them up and down by using this and just moving in and out of pin. The enlarger itself, the main part was an old bellows unit. The light would be forced through there and through the lens, and that would give me focusing. I then put a biscuit tin, no it wasn't, it was a dried milk tin on the top, and put the bulb in there. I made a sliding drawer out of, I think, some marine ply. Coated it several times, I rubbed it down so there was no friction there to scratch my negatives. So we're all ready to go. I started printing a few pictures, but I couldn't make out, there was something not quite right. I was getting a hazy fog in the middle of my prints. It suddenly dawned on me what this hazy fog was. It was the name Philips bulb, 40 watt. I was projecting that down onto the paper. I got round it, I went straight out and bought a proper enlarger bulb, and that got round it. But that got me started. It was okay for a while, but if I wanted to get better, I'd got to upgrade. So basically you go to the centre of the universe for all things photography, which would be Jessop's of Leicester. Little did I know at the time, all my visits backwards and forwards to Jessop's, that one day I would be working for them as their chief technician for darkroom equipment and demonstrator. That's a long way off yet, but we will get there in this story. If you liked it and you want more, then give us a tick and subscribe. That's the only way you're going to know how this story ends. It's quite interesting. I know, I lived it. Anyway, see you soon. Part 3 coming up.